Yo guys, what is up? Max on a Borderlands 4 video, and today we're going over basically a encompassing guide for firmware. We're going to be talking about what firmware is, where to farm it, how to apply it to your gear, and then we're also going to be doing a firmware tier list to kind of break down what firmware is actually good, what to hold on to, and what's useful in most builds, and what you could basically just avoid and never use. Hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Hope you find it informative. Let's do this. So to start, firmware is a additional bonus that can drop on your pieces of gear that when you have either one or three total can lead up to different bonuses, and your firmware can drop on your rep kit, your ordnance, your class mod, your shield, and on your enhancement. Now, every piece of firmware, which there's I think 21 total, comes with its own different bonuses, and those bonuses change whether you have one, two, or three pieces acquired. You can only have a total of 5 firmware on at a time, which allows you to do combos of two firmware, and one, or maybe you want to go with 3, 2. You could technically go one of each and go one, 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 one. But when you're wearing firmware, you're going to be getting different bonuses, and depending on what kind of build you're rocking, different firmware will be optimal for you to use, such as Deadeye, which gives you a bunch of crit damage. If you're doing a gun build, it can be really nice. Now, one of the best aspects of firmware is if you get a really cool piece of gear to drop. Let's say you get a really cool class mod or shield, and you want to add firmware to it because it doesn't drop with it. You can add firmware from any other piece of gear as long as it is in the same category to the piece of gear that you want to use. So for example, let's say I've got this cool watts for dinner that rolled with recharge rate and magazine booster. I can grab a green shield that rolled with Gadget Ahoy, and then I can transfer that firmware onto the shield, deleting whatever you're transferring from in the process. However, you can constantly keep adding to whatever piece of gear you're mainly using. So for example, most major towns will have this firmware transfer machine. I can take this green shield, which in the firmware, the one that I want to be destroyed, this item will be destroyed after transfer. I can then add that to my watts for dinner, and then I will get a watts for dinner with the Gadget Ahoy from the green. It costs a little bit of money and a little bit of iridium, but this is relatively cheap. You can kind of spam this. So I just transferred that. If I now change my mind and I want to do another one, I can transfer this high caliber from this blue shield back on. So you can infinitely transfer onto the item you're using, but everything that you're using for fuel will always get deleted. If you're looking for a list of all of the firmware, Chadley has a really good article on Maxroll that I'll have a link in the description that lists all of the different firmware and also their 1, 2, and 3 piece bonuses. So if you're trying to figure out what one you should be looking for your build, you can come here. It's also got a breakdown on some of the things and processes that I just described, but in written form. Now, in terms of farming firmware, I'd recommend farming either Splash Zone, which is a boss you can kill very quickly and get lots of drops, or farming a drill site, such as the Ripper Roadbirds is the drill site that I would recommend. And depending on what firmware you're looking for, can kind of depend if you want to turn on UVH or not. I personally just farm all my gear in UVH 5, but for example, when you turn on UVH 5, you get more firmware in your loot pool. Anything that is specific to certain manufacturer bonuses, like the COV or the Atlas firmware, that is going to be exclusively found in UVH. But if you're looking for things like Deadeye or High Caliber, your firmware loot pool is smaller on easy, normal, and hard. So if you're looking for those on pieces of gear, like you're looking for it on a blue or a green, you can farm on those tiers to have a smaller firmware loot pool to drop from. All right, now what you've probably been waiting for, let's do the tier list. Now, it's a little hard to rank these because, one, they're different bonuses, and sometimes their 2-piece bonus is really great and their 3-piece bonus is bad, or the 3-piece bonus is good, 2-piece bonus is bad. Sometimes one of these are just going to be great for their 1-piece bonus. As I go through these, I'm going to try to be talking about why I use them and what they're useful for. We'll also be showing on screen all of their different 1, 2, and 3-piece bonuses so that you can understand what we're talking about. In our tiers and our categories, we've got great on most builds. This means universally pretty much good. If you put it on any build, you will have a good time. Solid choice is not the best in slot, but very good. Niche but good is self-explanatory. Very niche case scenario builds will use this, but those builds that are using it are getting good use out of that. is like, it's technically not terrible, but I wouldn't use it over anything else. And then the never use is I can't find any reason to justify ever putting this on over anything else. So starting us off, we've got Goo JFC. This is mainly geared towards builds that are needing action skill cooldown, with higher tiers giving you even more action skill cooldown. I'm going to put this in niche but good. A lot of builds have really good action skill uptime without needing this, and then you're just opting for things that like don't give you a lot of damage, especially if you're going for the 3-piece bonus. Very certain like Amon builds or even Rafa builds could benefit from this, but most of the time just not super needed, especially because like the vending machines, especially if you're farming a boss, can just instant reset your cooldowns. It's really only necessary for mobbing. Next, we've got Get Throwin'. Get Throwin' gives you increased ordnance damage, splash radius, and then you get the like additional bonus for a 3-piece where your grenades and T-door throws have a 50% chance to spawn a homing projectile that does damage. That homing projectiles does horrible damage. It's really not worth ever using the 3-piece bonus on this. However, getting a little bit of extra ordnance damage and a little bit of extra splash damage is nice. I'm going to be putting that in also niche but good. There are better bonuses for ordnance builds, but using like a 2-piece bonus is pretty solid. Next, we've got Bullets to Spare. Now, Bullets to Spare is fantastic. I think it's great. The big thing that it's going to give you is extra fire rate. With Bullets to Spare, you're getting increased fire rate, increased gun magazine size, which is a pretty hard stat to find on most characters. And the 3-piece bonus gives you 50% of your gun magazine size as increased fire rate. Fire rate is really, really powerful in this game because everything is additive with each other. Fire rate's basically its own multiplier, and so getting more of it is really good. I really like this on like Harlow or like any character that doesn't have a ton of fire rate inherently. This is awesome for. Next, we've got Gadget Ahoy. This is mainly just for ordnance damage. 2-piece bonus giving you 20% ordnance damage, and then the 3-piece giving you 20% additional ordnance damage whenever you kill an enemy. I think this is a very solid choice for ordnance builds. I like rocking Gadget Ahoy. It's good. I think it's better than Get Throwing because you can actually use it for its 3-piece bonus versus I would never use Get Throwing's 3-piece. So we're putting it in solid choice. Next, we've got Daddy-O. I'm putting this in There's like technically scenarios that this could be interesting, giving you increased like mode swap speed, gun magazine, and then when you swap modes, you get increased damage and increased fire rate. I don't think there's like something that you really want this on yet. Maybe Bonnie and Clyde is going to get buffed in an upcoming patch, and then the Daddy-O could be kind of interesting very specifically for that weapon, but you'd also have it competing with all of the other things that give a bunch of damage. I just think it's very but I don't know if I'd put it in the never use because there's probably going to be some weird niche case scenarios that you could potentially get use out of that. Next, we've got Risky Boots. Now, Risky Boots, I'm putting in niche but good, mainly because it gives you 100% increased damage when your health is really low, and it'll also give you some movement speed and reduce damage taken. On Grenade Rafa, this is basically a must-have. I don't know of any other build that uses this. Risky Boots could be better if there was more ways to stay at low health. Unfortunately, staying at low health, especially because it rolls with lifesteal, is quite difficult. So it's a cool thing, but really only one build that I know of that like actually takes use of Risky Boots right now. Next, we've got Lifeblood. This gives you some extra like rep kit healing. It gives you some lifesteal, and when you kill an enemy, you get health back. I'm putting this in never use just because I don't see any reason to ever use it right now. You can use rep kits like the Kill Spring to constantly give you health, way more than 10% on kill. So using this for a 3-piece bonus, I just don't think will ever be worth. Next up, we've got God Killer. Now, prior to making this list, was going to be putting God Killer in I haven't used it in any build. However, in talking with some other folks, I've learned some things about God Killer that I didn't realize, and we're actually going to be putting it up in solid choice. Now, God Killer gives you increased damage to badass enemies by 10% on a 1-piece bonus, and 20%, or like the 2-piece bonus is 10% less damage taken, and the 3-piece bonus is on kill of a badass enemy, you get 20% increased damage for 60 seconds. Now, the reason I'm putting this in solid choice is 2 things. 1, bosses do in fact count as badass enemies for God Killer, so it does work on bosses, but the real reason this is in solid choice is because the first 1 out of 1 or 1 out of 3 bonus, the 10% increased damage to badasses is a multiplier. Multipliers are incredibly rare to come across in Borderlands 4. Most things are additive with each other. If you don't know what that means, basically if you put just one piece of God Killer on, you will deal 10% more damage to bosses, which is fantastic. Probably going to be working that into more builds, but as a 1 out of 3 bonus, it's great. Don't know if I'd ever go all the way to the 3-piece bonus, but most builds will actually gain damage from putting on just one piece of God Killer, so that's why we're putting it in solid choice. Next, we've got Rubber Band Man. This gives you increased lifesteal, and then if you wear a 3-piece bonus of it, you get 10% increased lifesteal. I don't really see the point in using this. Maybe potentially on a Bleed Vex build or a Lifesteal Vex build, but even then, there's just better options. I'm gonna be putting it in I guess you could argue that you could use it on certain builds. I just don't think it really wins over other things. So yeah, I think as probably a pretty good place for that. Speaking of never used, Jacked has to do with Hyperion shields. You get zoom speed on a tier 1 bonus. You get gun shield capacity increased on a 2-piece bonus. And the 3-piece is you have a chance to ricochet projectiles that they shoot at your shield back to enemies. I don't ever see a reason for ever using this, especially when there's other options on the table. So Jack goes into never use. Next, we've got Action Fist. This gives you increased melee damage, increased action skill damage, and whenever you get a melee kill, you get increased action skill damage. A lot of melee builds right now are using their action skill as their source of melee damage, so I think this is fantastic. It is niche because it's only ever going to get used on melee builds, but it's a fantastic choice for melee builds. Next, we've got Oscar Mike. Now, I haven't really used this in any builds, but I was looking more closely at the bonuses, and I think they're pretty good. The big thing with Oscar Mike is for the 2-piece bonus, you get 20% gun damage if your weapon mag is getting low. But the real kicker is for the 3-piece bonus, after you reload, you get 30% increased fire rate. That is some of the highest fire rate from any of the firmware. It's really impressive for 30% for 4 seconds after reloading. I'd imagine, honestly, you could get some really good use out of that on just a reload on a sticky build, 30% faster applying of all of those stickies to get that detonation off. I'd imagine you could get some really, really solid use out of it. Not using it right now on any builds, but 30% fire rate is very, very powerful. Next, we've got Baker. I'm going to be putting this into niche but good. The 3-piece bonus gives you 25% increased health. It also gives you increased shield capacity. There's an Amon node that I've been peeping that I think is going to be really strong once they nerf Groundbreaker that gives you flat damage based off of your shield, and Baker would be used for that. Also for Bloodshot Vex, she can take advantage of Baker getting increased health. Just a solid option, but very niche. Next, we've got Deadeye. You probably already know where this is going. Deadeye gives you increased accuracy at a 1-piece bonus, 25% crit damage for your guns at a 2-piece bonus, and then the 3-piece bonus is every critical hit grants you stacking crit damage up to 5 stacks. One thing that's really crazy about Deadeye is the 3-piece bonus is not specific to guns. So if you're doing an ordnance build, you massively benefit from this. If you're doing a melee build that's critting enemies, you can massively benefit from Deadeye. It's just a ton of damage. There isn't a build that you would put this on and be worse off for. So gonna put it in our S tier. Next up, I'm kind of grouping Atlas X and Atlas Infinium kind of into the same category. Atlas X reads on its 3-piece bonus, when you kill an Atlas target locked enemy, you automatically target lock another enemy. That's nice quality of life for sure. Atlas Infinium gives you Atlas target locks are infinite unless you swap guns. Both of these are just kind of quality of life for Atlas parts, and I don't really see a real reason to use them, especially when you're missing out on a ton of damage for using them. So I'm going to be putting both of the Atlas things into Next, we've got Real Big Fist. Real Big Fist gives you increased melee damage for a 1-piece, even more increased damage for the 2-piece, and then its 3-piece bonus is that your melee kills trigger a melee nova. This is great on melee builds. I don't really ever go for the 3-piece bonus just because the nova is a very, very small radius. And so most of the time it's just not working, and it doesn't work on bosses. However, just for a fair bit of increased melee damage, it's really nice, niche, but good. Next, we've got Airstrike. I really like Airstrike. Its one-piece bonus gives you 20% increased splash radius, which on builds just as a one-piece is good. Its two-piece bonus gives you 20% splash damage, which applies to a ton of different things. Its three-piece bonus, I don't think is ever really worth using. The on-kill drop a missile. The missile just doesn't really do much damage. However, as a like two-piece bonus, it applies to a lot of different builds, ordnance builds, grenade builds. Even like neutron capture could benefit from this. Melee builds with like aim on doing the big bond camera benefits from this. Just really, really good across most builds, but definitely not in S tier. Then we've got heating up. I also think heating up is really good. Heating up one-piece bonus is 20% reload speed, which I know that doesn't sound like crazy, but there's not a lot of great sources of reload speed in the game. Reload speed, if you are reloading, is just a increase to your DPS. There's a lot of builds that use the like Stellium shotgun that after you reload, you can get with a Malon enhancement, 100% status effect chance. Heating up for a build that's constantly reloading is just a must-have. Plus, its two-piece bonus gives you 50% increased shots while you're like overheating before your weapon breaks, which is really good on anything that rolls with the COV part, especially like on Bloodshot Vex. Fantastic with duct tape mod. Gonna put that into solid choice. And then we've got Trick Shot and High Caliber. I don't know how like some of the best ones got left for last. Trick Shot, I also think is really good. The reason that Trick Shot I would set apart from like other things, and the reason I'd put it so highly is because Trick Shot is one of the only sources in the entire game of genuine free ammo. Trick Shot gives you increased reload speed. It gives you gun crit, but it's three-piece bonus. Your crits have a 50% chance to refund one ammo. A lot of sources in the game of ammo regen or ammo refund are just giving you ammo from your reserves, which means you're still going to run out of ammo. If you're having ammo issues, Trick Shot is like one of the best ways to solve this. I use this on Ordnance Harlow to upkeep her Ordnance with like Harlow, which doesn't have a lot of ordnance skills. You can also use it on Vex or any build that fires very quickly to try to keep up your ammo and not run out so fast. And then lastly, we've got High Caliber. High Caliber, I'm also going to be putting in our S tier. The one-piece bonus is projectile speed, which is really nice, honestly. Huge quality of life. Its two-piece bonus, the 10% gun damage, for some reason is multiplicative gun damage, meaning your guns will just deal 10% more damage with two-piece High Caliber, making it the best in slot on a lot of gun builds. And then its three-piece bonus basically gives you Bore, which is insane. It doubles your damage on certain weapons that can double hit, such as the like Katagawas, or if you're using a Hail Spike. It's just ridiculous amounts of damage. Definitely deserving of our S tier. Guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I will have a link to the image of this down below in the description if you want to have it beside you while you're farming. I'll also have a link to Chiley's firmware article. Overall, firmware, I think, is a very cool addition to the game. I really do think we need some quality of life to be able to, like, instead of having to constantly save all this crap pieces of gear with firmware on it, if there was some sort of firmware library that we could just like break down gear and save our firmware. And I'm looking forward to them adding more stuff and buffing some of our current ones, which we know they plan to do. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I will catch you all in the next one. Take care. Peace.